Okay, I think we should go ahead and get started. Shelley Evans asked a question, how come I don't always see the questions that are being asked? The Q&A, you should be able to see as attendees. I can see right now in the Q&A, it says, Bonnie Way has typed in saying, Snohomish Master Gardener here. Welcome, Master Gardener. And we have a message from Gail Sklar this morning. Thank you for presenting today the new book, Plant Selection Guide, Heritage Gardens of the Columbia River Basin is marvelous. Thank you, Gail. We will be referring to that book today throughout the presentation. And it is available in the WNPS online store. Chat says text can only be seen by panelists. If you go to the menu and pull down, you can open all panelists and attendees. So please be sure to share the chat with the attendees. And yes, we will post the name of the book. This is the book everyone is referring to, Plant Selection Guide, Heritage Gardens of the Columbia River Basin. My name is Denise Mackey. I'm the business manager for the Washington Native Plant Society. And we're here today with Heather Wendt and Donna Lucas and the Columbia Basin chapter. The Columbia Basin chapter worked directly with the Benton County Conservation District to produce this beautiful book, which you'll hear more and more about today. I wanted to acknowledge the members of the Columbia Basin chapter and also our good friend, member and strong volunteer, Terry Kanoki. We lost Terry this week. And she felt very passionate about this project. So I know that she'd be very, very pleased that despite the canceling of many Native Plant Appreciation Month events this month, we have these webinars and opportunities to gather. So thank you for being here. It is my pleasure to introduce Heather Wendt of the Benton Conservation District. Heather is a conservationist and co-creator of the Heritage Garden Program. She's also the co-author of Plant Selection Guide, Heritage Gardens of the Columbia River Basin. Heather has worked for conservation districts since 1997. She currently serves as the assistant manager for both the Benton and Franklin conservation districts, and she's responsible for coordinating the Heritage Garden Program in Benton, Franklin, and Yakima counties. Heather lives in Kennewick with her husband Greg, daughter Allie, and their mini Aussie Flynn. And also with us today is co-author Donna Lucas. Donna has been an active member of the Washington Native Plant Society's Columbia River Basin chapter since 2003, including serving on the board. At an early age, she discovered a love of the natural world while exploring her family's Indiana woods and prairies. Photographing native flora and fauna and gardening with native plants are her favorite pastimes. Donna and Louise's daughter Elspeth helped edit this book. Thank you very much, both of you, for being with us. I'm going to turn the floor over to Heather, and Donna will join us at the end for our Q&A session.
Excellent. Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you again for being here this morning. We are just going to get the slideshow started here, so hopefully everyone can see the presentation on their screens. And so, yes, so today I wanted to join you and talk about promoting native plants through community partnerships, specifically our Heritage Garden program. So if you're not familiar with conservation districts, I wanted to give you a little bit of background about the partners that created this program. So conservation districts, we were created out of the Dust Bowl. Not literally, but you know, back in the 1930s, we had this tremendous ecological disaster, prolonged drought, and some maybe not the best agricultural practices going on in parts of our country, which sort of exacerbated the issue. So in 1935, President Roosevelt developed the Soil Conservation Act to address this national crisis, and conservation districts were born out of that. Conservation districts are local, non-regulatory agencies that are tasked with promoting the conservation and wise use of natural resources. So think of us a little bit like a special purpose district. So we are government, but really we're working one-on-one with private landowners to conserve soil, water, air, and plants. So the Native Plant Society, if you're from the Master Gardeners or other organizations and you're not familiar, this is a wonderful, wonderful entity, a 501c3 formed in 1976 that has now grown to over 1,700 members. They have 12 active chapters throughout Washington. I'm a proud member of the Columbia Basin chapter. And the mission of the Washington Native Plant Society is to promote the appreciation and conservation of Washington's native plants and their habitats through study, education, and advocacy. So you have a government agency in the Conservation District, and you have this wonderful nonprofit Native Plant Society organization. And we came together in 2010 to create the Heritage Garden program. Now, at the time, I had been tasked by the Benton Conservation District to promote xeriscaping, low water use landscaping. In Benton County, we have Kennewick, Richland, and West Richland, these large urban areas. And the Conservation District really wanted to reach out to those areas with a program to save water. So they were promoting xeriscaping. And my experience in the community was this. I would go out and I would talk to people and they would go, ugh, xeriscaping. Ugh, that's going to be brown. It's going to be unattractive. Thank you, but no thank you. So we really weren't getting any traction until Donna Lucas with the Columbia Basin chapter came up to me one day and she said, Heather, you know, if you call it a garden, they will come. So the Heritage Garden program was really born out of that concept of rebranding and really creating a program, a gardening program, to promote what the Native Plant Society wanted to really promote, which was native plants, and what the Conservation District wanted to promote was water conservation. So what is a heritage garden? Well, heritage gardens are landscaped areas designed to honor the cultural and natural heritage of the Columbia River Basin while utilizing sustainable gardening practices. We are talking about gardening. We're not talking about restoration activities. So it's a little bit different you know, than restoration. We took 18 months, Donna and I, to develop the program. Donna, I don't know if you remember, it was a really long time. But we really were very intentional in what we were trying to put together. We wanted to create something that would be successful because we really hadn't taken a program specifically to promote, you know, working with native plants. So the purpose of the program, again, back to that, what, you know, we want to do at the Native Plant Society, we want to promote the use of native plants, especially those of cultural significance. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. We want to promote low water use landscaping and efficient irrigation methods. That really gets to the heart of what the Conservation District was trying to do. And combined, we really wanted to educate our community about the history and biodiversity of the Columbia River Basin. We live in an amazing area. And we really wanted to take this opportunity to promote the uniqueness of the area that we call home. So when we created the Heritage Garden program, we really focused on 4 different areas: flora, fauna, geology, and cultural significance. We created a certification checklist. That checklist has practices that are required in order to be considered a certified heritage garden. And we also incorporated recommended practices, things that a gardener might want to include, but it wasn't really required. A good example of that is a way to provide water for wildlife that might visit your garden. And so in creating this criteria, we really wanted to think about, okay, how could we create gardens predominantly using native plants, but so that we had some sideboards, if you will. So what constitutes a heritage garden? So if we look at the plants, when we created the program, we wanted to have at least 5 different species of plants. We wanted some biodiversity. 75% of those plants needed to be native to Washington state. So why not 100%? Well, there are some really phenomenal plants that are native to the desert Southwest that do extremely well here. And we also wanted to allow gardeners to maybe add some cultivars of our native plants to add some diversity and maybe add some extra color in the summer. So we wanted to provide a little flexibility in the program. 30% of the plants need to have a water requirement of less than 10 inches of water annually. Those are the ones in our area that don't require any supplemental water. And no more than 10% needing more than 30 inches of water annually. So this would probably be that one plant that your great aunt gave you as a gift that's in that area that you want to have a heritage garden. And it just needs quite a bit of extra water. Well, we can accommodate that and still make sure that you can have a certified heritage garden. So we're trying to be flexible. So our program area, this is a precipitation map. When we designed our program, we designed it for that less than 10-inch precip zones, that dark orange area. But certainly the plants that we're recommending, a lot of them can go up into that 10 to 15 inch zone. And we even incorporate plants in our gardens that are up in that 15 to 20 inch zone. And that's if we have some drip irrigation or some irrigation overspray from, for example, a lawn area. But really we're looking at Franklin County, Benton County, portions of Yakima, Grant, Adams, over into Walla Walla, down into Oregon. That's our program criteria. I do want to say that if you're listening to this from other parts of Washington state, Terry Kanoki's idea was, this program concept can be easily adapted, and your criteria would just be adapted to your specific area. So you could have heritage gardens of the Puget Sound, for example. Other districts, conservation districts and other chapters can certainly adopt this concept very easily. So moving on with our criteria, fauna. We want to include at least 2 plant species having wildlife value. This is extremely easy, folks. Anything that flowers is going to provide pollen or nectar for butterflies and insects and bees. You can think of plants that provide habitat for birds or grasses, provide seeds for wildlife. This is a very easy criteria to meet. This is more about education, really educating landowners about, what the value is of these particular plants that we're trying to promote. Cultural significance. There's 2 aspects we really focused on for the plants in the Heritage Garden program. Plants that were significant to the indigenous peoples. Maybe they were used by the tribes for food, shelter, medicine. We also live in an amazing area where we had many early explorers and botanists. So incorporating in plants that were noted, for example, in the Lewis and Clark expedition. I have some heritage gardeners, or one in particular. Alice, I don't know if you're on the webinar today, but she has a heritage garden that is just Lewis and Clark plants. That was her focus. So again, many different options for incorporating you know, the cultural significance of our plants into our gardens, and having one plant that is culturally significant beyond search, and it's very, very easy to do. And geologic features. We live in an area that is rich in geologic history, from the Ice Age floods to the basalt flows. So we encourage homeowners to at least have one geologic feature in their garden. And it could be something like a basalt column. That can be kind of spendy. So, you know, you don't have to have a basalt column. It's not a requirement. Maybe you just want to use basalt mulch, or maybe you have a crushed basalt pathway. Maybe you're able to obtain an Ice Age flood deposit erratic. You can use river rock for a dry riverbed. At our Heritage Garden workshops, if you have too many rocks in your garden, we do a donate a rock. So we're just talking about using native materials. And again, it's an homage. It's not supposed to be a criteria that's difficult to meet, but I do like to see people come to our workshops and leave, you know, with a rock in their purse. It's kind of fun to watch. So you can get your geologic features. We will help you. So when we created the Heritage Garden program, we did create a plant list. These are plants that our gardeners in our area have indicated that are, you know, adaptable into, you know, a homeowner's garden. We included plants, we focused really on plants that were going to be available from commercial nurseries, or commercial native plant nurseries, I should say. And plants that really do well. Again, Donna and I worked very closely with other members of the Native Plant Society to really put together this list. We want this program to be successful. We didn't want to really recommend plants that were going to be extremely hard either to find or to grow. So this is an example of some information that you can find in the Heritage Garden Plant Selection Guide, the book, and in our PDF list online for Heritage Gardens. So this is purple sage. If you're not familiar with purple sage, it's actually a salvia. It's this beautiful deciduous shrub. Requires less than 10 to 14 inches of water. It prefers full sun. It's native to Washington and the Columbia Basin. And it's this beautiful mounding shrub. It has a very nice form. Gets these beautiful, beautiful spikes of purple flowers in late spring, early summer. The hummingbirds love it, bees and butterflies, and it is culturally significant to the tribes. Many of them used different parts of this plant for medicinal purposes, and it's just a really nice, attractive shrub. Sulfur buckwheat. This is another phenomenal native plant that we have in our book and in our plant list. Again, you know, it has a water requirement, you know, anywhere from less than 10 to 18 inches of water. 12 inches tall, can spread to 36 inches wide. Blooms in the summer. It gets these amazing little sulfur yellow pom-pom flowers on it, and it's compact and it's semi-evergreen. One of the things I like about this plant is in the fall the leaves can actually turn sort of a reddish brown, but it just puts on this beautiful display, and it's very, very important to pollinators in our area. You see the rabbit symbol, it doesn't mean that it tracks rabbits. It just means that it has wildlife value for mammals. I get that question a lot. So no, I'm not going to intentionally recommend anything that you're going to be attacked by a herd of cottontails, because I have that problem at some of my gardens, but not because of anything I planted. They were already there. Munro's Globemallow, here's a wonderful native plant. Again, native to Washington and the Columbia Basin. Blooms May through August. So this is a wonderful plant to add summer color to the garden. It's very drought tolerant. It will reseed, but not aggressively. One of the things we really work with our landowners, our homeowners on, are really recommending plants that meet their gardening needs. Some homeowners are okay with plants that reseed and some aren't. And so that knowledge and experience we sort of bring to the table to recommend plants that they will actually appreciate and enjoy. And I'm not going to get any phone calls later saying, I have this plant and it's taken over my yard and my neighbor's yard. So we want to be a little careful, because I think if you understand native plants, you know, some of them can reseed a little aggressively. So we want to avoid recommending those in certain circumstances. This is not one of them. Oregon Sunshine, oh my gosh, this is a showstopper in the spring. Beautiful, beautiful showy yellow flowers just cascade off of this plant. You do need to treat it like an annual or a biennial, and this is something that you just need to be aware of. You need to allow it to reseed. So if you like plants where you plant them and they stay in one area, I probably wouldn't recommend this specific plant because it will move around in your garden. And if you use landscape fabric, that too will inhibit the reseeding. So there are other plants that I would probably recommend. But this is just a phenomenal showstopper. Pair it with firecracker penstemon. That's a red penstemon from the desert Southwest. Those two combined for a spring bloom are just amazing. Fragrant Evening Primrose. This is a very beautiful, compact primrose, blooms in early summer, you know, huge, huge white blossoms. Don't overwater it. And in fact, one of the problems Donna and I find most often is that we have to tell people to not water as much. Even though most of these plants require little to no water, overwatering seems to be the issue that we deal with most often. So don't overwater, underwater, and then you can always add some water later. So indigenous has some indigenous significance, also noted during the Lewis and Clark expedition. Pale Evening Primrose is the more regionally native primrose that we have right here in our area. Blooms again in early summer, so you can tell the flowers are somewhat similar. This one is a little leggier though. It tends to have a more organic form to it. It's not as compact. And so depending on the gardener's preferences, it'll determine which one of these plants that I actually tend to recommend. Pale Evening Primrose is wonderful if you have sandy soil. It really prefers that sandy soil, and it will move around in the garden. It will reseed, but again, not aggressively. But we need to, if you're going to have it, you need to be able to provide it with that opportunity. So those are just some examples of some of the plants that we highlight in the book and in our plant list. One of the things I hear oftentimes, I'll do presentations and I'll show photographs. It's important to note heritage gardens come in all sizes. It does not have to be your entire front yard. When Donna and I first started this program, we worked with one of our gardeners, Randy, in Richland, and she did her entire front yard. And I just thought it was just so amazing that I just always showcased her garden, except then I really realized very quickly that people thought it had to be your entire front yard. It does not. Heritage gardens come in all sizes. I recommend, if you've never gardened with native plants, to really start small. That area of your yard that maybe doesn't receive enough water from your irrigation system, that super hot area right along your sidewalk or your driveway, a weedy patch that has no irrigation to it at all, those are optimal areas to start your heritage garden journey. And then from there, you can decide and you know, how much of your yard you want to transform. So I thought it'd be fun if we take a little virtual tour of some of our gardens. This is Cheryl's garden in Richland. And Cheryl had that grass stripped area right next to her driveway and her sidewalk. She could not keep the grass green. And you'll notice it's sort of backed up to an area where she had some trees and some evergreen shrubs. And you'll also notice that gray strip between the grass and the rest of her landscaping. That's that concrete edging so many of us have in our lawns. Just wanted to point that out because I'll show you something here in a minute. But Cheryl took out all of her lawn, you can see there, and she put in a dry riverbed coming down and just filled that area with native plants. So here's an up-close look of Cheryl's dry riverbed. And the best compliment that she gets from her neighbors, people will be walking down the sidewalk. She did such a phenomenal job placing the rocks that it looks like water has flowed down this feature before. And so people will stop her and ask her when she's going to turn the water on. But no, it is a dry riverbed. And that picture that you see there on the right, you can see that she's placed rocks, some basalt rocks sort of in a sort of a wave pattern down along the edge of the sidewalk. Cheryl's a retired teacher, and she knows all too well that kiddos on their way to school are going to step off that sidewalk into her garden. And so she sort of created that border, that edging there with the basalt mulch to protect the plants that are planted further back. And remember I said kind of keep in mind that concrete edging. Well, if you'll look, she didn't actually take out the concrete edging. What she's done is she's taken those larger basalt rocks, placed them at the base, and backfilled with some soil. So she didn't, you know, have the expense of removing the edging. She's basically just covered it up and then planted her native plants behind that. So thrifty and smart. So this is Reg and Sheila's garden in Kennewick. It started out, you know, again, as that sort of odd shaped lawn area with some landscape plants around in the center of their circular driveway. Not really doing anything, not really adding anything. And so they took out all of the grass and all of the plants and put in a beautiful, beautiful pathway and basalt mulch and all of these gorgeous, gorgeous native plants. And they even found this beautiful basalt boulders in the center, which were completely covered up by the overgrown vegetation. So there's another photo of their garden as it continued to grow. So Globemallow, you've got fragrant evening primrose there in the bottom left, rabbit brush blooming, that's the yellow flowers. The white that you see is snow buckwheat, an amazing plant that's very important for pollinators, blooms late summer, early fall. Just some gorgeous, gorgeous native plants there. And again, that pathway leading right up to that beautiful basalt boulder that was hidden by all of those plants. You would never have known it was there. Martin's Heritage Garden in Pasco. Martin had a definite idea of the plants he wanted to use. And so we basically created a little visual guide for him, a little planting plan, and helped him really realize where he wanted to put them so that they would sort of create something that the city of Pasco wouldn't mind. This was before the city allowed for this type of landscaping. So we were very careful preparing Martin so that he would have something that was aesthetically pleasing. He wanted a berm, so that I don't know if you can see it, but sort of in the center of the planting is sort of Those dark burgundy lines represent kind of a bermed area. This is kind of looking down. And here is his garden realized. He had some granite erratics that were buried in his yard that he unburied and placed around. Those are those light colored stones that you see. Taking advantage of sagebrush that had died. So he has sort of the sagebrush, the skeleton there of the dead sagebrush sort of nestled into the basalt rocks. Just a gorgeous job. And layering in those geologic features to really add interest. So different size mulch in with the granite erratics, those white rocks, really add some visual interest to the garden as well. Ernie's garden in Richland. Ernie is the chair of the Heritage Garden Program for the Columbia Basin chapter. Ernie often goes out on site visits with me, and his Heritage Garden has a Western theme. Remember I mentioned Alice earlier where she had her garden. It was a Lewis and Clark inspired garden. Well, native plant gardens are like any garden. You can create any theme that you want. It's just in the plants that you choose. And our program can help you with that. But Ernie's are all Columbia Basin natives, many from seeds that he has salvaged on hikes. And he's grown these beautiful plants, many of which are not commercially available. So he's got some wild onions there, things that you wouldn't find at native plant nurseries. At the top, that's top left is rigid sage and a Globemallow. Absolutely gorgeous. Joe's Heritage Garden in Kennewick. Again, we've got these areas of lawn that are sort of isolated and not really doing any good. They're there because we don't have anything else to plant there, or we didn't. And so we helped Joe create a heritage garden in this area of his yard. The yellow that you can see there, that's the Oregon sunshine. But we've created some, he really liked Great Basin wild rye. Great Basin wild rye is one of our native grasses. It gets 7 feet tall and 3 feet wide. I often wonder why people want to plant pampas grass when you could plant something that's native and requires no water. But that's definitely something he incorporated in his garden, along with big leaf lupin. And behind those dancing, singing frogs is the shrubby penstemon. That's blooming now, or just starting to bloom now in our gardens here in the Tri-Cities. And then you have the beautiful blue flowers there. That's blue flax, Lewis's blue flax. An absolutely gorgeous, gorgeous native plant. So resources for our Heritage Garden Program, what do we offer people? So how do we get folks to implement heritage gardens? Well, we provide information on creating a heritage garden. Our partnership extends past the creation of this program. I will do site visits with homeowners, and often a member of the Native Plant Society will come with me. And oftentimes it's Donna Lucas or Ernie Crediford or another member, depending on who's available. And we talk with the homeowner when we're there, and we basically work with them one-on-one to determine what is their gardening aesthetic. Do they want a garden where the plants are going to reseed and it's going to be very organic in nature? Or, you know, are they a busy professional who does not have a lot of time to garden? Do they need plants that are going to be fairly stationary and long-lived, that really don't need to reseed? And based on that interaction, we create a custom plant list. Maybe they want a garden that attracts hummingbirds. We have all of that information. And they choose the plants based on our recommendations. And from their choices, we can create a planting guide or a visual aid that shows them how to group the plants. And if they decide that they want to have a certified garden and their garden meets the criteria, then they are eligible to receive a yard sign. And who doesn't want a yard sign? You know, bragging rights to your neighbors that you have a certified garden. But again, it's a way to educate the community. It's a way to educate, you know, other landowners in your neighborhood that this type of landscaping is very doable and it's very beautiful. One of the things I tend to hear from my gardeners the most is, I didn't realize it was going to be so lush. Yes, we can create very lush landscapes, even in less than 10-inch precip zones using native plants. So we partnered together with the Columbia Basin chapter on the Heritage Garden website. There was so much information, we really didn't want to just put it on the Conservation District's website or the Native Plant Society's website. So we have our own Heritage Garden website that is maintained by myself and Donna Lucas with the Native Plant Society. Mostly Donna, because she's the web guru. And on this website, you can find information on how to create a heritage garden. All of our resources are there, the plant list, along with virtual tours of gardens. So if you want to see more gardens, you can go online and check that out. Program funding. So since this is a partnership project, I did want to talk a little bit about how this program is funded. So it is offered free to residents in Benton and Franklin counties since its inception. I think we rolled the program out in 2011, certified our first garden in 2012. And the funding is provided by the Conservation District. And we receive grants from the Washington State Conservation Commission. That's sort of our overriding state agency. So the Native Plant Society volunteers their time to assist us, but we at the Conservation District actually fund staff time to really be the boots on the ground and to do the day-to-day implementation of the program. And our program is growing. In the fall of 2018, we expanded into Yakima County. The Benton Conservation District partnered with the North and the South Yakima Conservation Districts. We received a grant from the Washington Department of Ecology through the municipal subgroup of the Yakima Basin Integrated Plan. These folks are interested in water conservation, okay? So that's where the funding came from to expand into Yakima County. And additionally, it's just not conservation districts that are partnering together. January of 2020, the Columbia Basin chapter entered into a partnership agreement with the Central Washington chapter of the Native Plant Society to implement the Heritage Garden program in Yakima County. And so really what that means is that when we do Heritage Garden workshops in Yakima County, we will invite the Central Washington chapter. They can help us with those workshops. Members will be invited to go out on site visits, maybe to collaborate on any public gardens that we work on. And really, we're growing this community. We're growing the partnerships to be successful because the Central Washington chapter has, you know, very specific and unique information to Yakima County, which is going to really allow us to be even more successful in that area. And beyond the Heritage Garden program itself, our collaboration and partnership with the Columbia Basin chapter continues. And it continued into actually publishing a book. This is the book that we were referencing earlier. This is the Plant Selection Guide. Donna and I, you know, really wanted to create something that was a little bit more visual, that we could get into more people's hands as an educational tool. So we took our wonderful plant list that we already had and worked with other members of the chapter of the Columbia Basin Native Plant Society as technical contributors. Many of those folks, including Donna herself, contributed photos along with the amazing Jane Abel, who is one of our collaborators, a local photographer. And Jack Nesbitt, I don't know if you all are familiar with Jack. He is an author and a naturalist from the Spokane area. He was kind enough to write the foreword for this book. And here's an example of one of the plants that we highlight. This is Munro's Globemallow. You've heard me talk about it already today. But again, we go over the description of the plant, some gardening tips, how we would use it here in our gardens, tidbits, that's again the cultural significance, and then beautiful, beautiful photos. And again, we can't thank our contributors, Jane Abel and the other contributors from the Columbia Basin chapter for really making this book the amazing resource that it is. It would not look like it does without all of their contributions. So we are very, very grateful. So other partnership opportunities. So if you are joining us today from another chapter of the Native Plant Society or another organization, or even the Master Gardeners, different ways that you can partner to promote native plant landscaping. In addition to our one-on-one site visits with landowners, we also have workshops. We do spring and fall workshops where we partner with the Native Plant Society and other partners, the Master Gardeners, WSU. We just have a phenomenal large group of folks that share their time and expertise to come and speak at our workshops. We do garden tours. That's always fun, getting out in the spring and doing tours. We also partner with our local chapter of the Native Plant Society on their plant sales. So we will come and we set up a heritage garden booth, and the Native Plant Society will be hosting their plant sale, and we'll go around and talk to homeowners. It's great when people buy plants, but we oftentimes want them to have a plan for what they're going to do with them so that they're successful. And it's really fun to see homeowners that we've worked with through the Heritage Garden Program. They bring their planting plans and their plant lists to the Native Plant Society plant sale, and they do their shopping. And then if they need to do substitutions, if they can't find a particular plant, then we're there. We can help them pick a plant that will work instead of maybe something that they were thinking of. And community planting projects. Oh my goodness. We often do demonstration gardens and have community projects. I could not do those without the Native Plant Society. They are my core experts, making sure those plants are planted properly and really engaging the public. They just have so much knowledge to share. So those are fun projects that we get to work on. So there's my information. Hey, Donna, there we are. So this photo was taken at one of our planting projects at the end of the day. It was a long day, but we got a lot of plants planted. That was our good friend, Gretchen Graber, who designed the WSU Wine and Science Center garden. And Gretchen, I don't know if you're on the call today, but if you are, happy birthday. It's your birthday today. My birthday was yesterday. So as Native Plant Society people, we have to keep it close together. So anyway, so there's my information. There's the information for our Columbia Basin chapter. And with that, I'm happy to answer questions. Let's see. So Donna, we have a question. It says, you said that we should be careful not to overwater certain natives to this area. What about watering to established plants like the evening, like pale evening primrose? Do you have some recommendations on that? Or do you want me to?
Don't water it too much.
So when's the best time to plant native plants, Donna?
Oh, in the spring or late fall. Late fall is wonderful because Mother Nature gives us water through the winter. So there have been times I've been out planting like sagebrush in as late as October, November, and it cooled off, the rains came, and I did not have to do any supplemental watering on those plants. If you plant them in the spring, that works, but you have to work harder at helping them get established. Water them for about a year.
Right. So when you say water them to get them established, maybe in those weeks where we have, it's over 100 degrees, you know, maybe go out once a week or twice a week to water. Just keep an eye on them.
Yeah,
If
keep
they
an
look
eye
droopy.
on them is the main thing.
Yeah.
See, you know, go out and pay attention to them. I think that's one thing that bothers me. People prescription, you know. So do I go out 3 days a week or 2 days a week? Or, well, go out every day and look at them. And if they look thirsty, give them some water. If they look happy, don't give them water. You do have to pay attention to them. They will tell you if they're not happy.
Yeah, I think one of the most interesting things that I found is that if we overwater the native grasses, they actually fall over.
Yes.
That's a good sign.
Well, I had a rabbit brush that got overwatered because it was up next to the property line, and it turned out it was getting flooded by the neighbor. I didn't realize that. And it was just flat on the ground. It grew like crazy, then it just was flat. And they get spoiled, ruined, I don't mean, yeah. They get ruined if you give them too much water.
Yeah. Okay, so hopefully we answered that question. So ideally planted in the fall, and then if it's pale evening primrose, you know, no supplemental water really the next year, but just kind of keep an eye on it, and go from there. If you have questions, call us. That's one of the nice things about the Heritage Garden program is we work one-on-one with landowners, and if they have questions during implementation of their garden, we're always happy to swing by and take a look and answer questions. That's part of the program. Take a photo, you know, email it to us, call us. There's lots of different ways to get help. If you have questions, ask. That's the important thing. So we have another question. It's, do you only work with private citizens, or do you partner with businesses or parks departments to promote native landscaping with low watering maintenance costs? Absolutely. We work with private businesses and we work with municipalities. One of the projects that we did a couple of years ago here was partnering with the city of Kennewick on Hanson Park's Heritage Garden. It's a 20,000 square foot demonstration garden. And Donna and I have been out there this spring doing some spring cleanup and volunteering our time to do some maintenance. But yes, if you're a municipality and you're working on a project and you're working with a professional landscape company, we are happy to review those landscape plans, and we do, and provide input. If you're a business and, you know, again, if you're just looking to add some native plants, you know, or if you're, you know, doing, starting from scratch and you're working again with a landscape company, a landscape architect, again, we're happy to provide input on that. And parks departments, yes, give us a call. We can definitely provide some technical assistance as well. Again, we're covering Benton, Franklin, and Yakima counties at the present time. So feel free, give us a call if you're in that area. Does King County have a program like this? King County does not have a heritage garden program, but I do know that they have an amazing website promoting native plants. So type in King County native plants, and because I've been online and I drool over their website. It is phenomenal.
It's amazing.
It is an amazing resource, and that's all you have to do. Go King County native plants, and it should come up. And it's actually the county that hosts that website. And if you're not sure what your local jurisdiction offers, type in the name of your county along with the words conservation district, and see, go to your local conservation district's website, see what type of programming they offer. They may have something similar to the Heritage Garden program. Probably just won't be called Heritage Gardens, but they might have something for you. In the demonstration garden in Hanson Park, I see some small sprayers rather than just drippers for irrigation. Is that better? No.
No.
But we have to understand that when we're working on municipal projects, there are limitations to their ability to maintain those projects and to make sure that their systems are operating. I can't even remember how many hundreds of plants we have out at Hanson Park, but if there was drip irrigation to each of those plants, when the city turns the water on, they have no idea if the system is functioning. So that's why they did micro sprays. And I don't know that we were really 100% sure that that's what they were going to use. I probably would have designed the garden a little different, but Donna and I are working on converting some of those areas over to drip. So to answer your question, drip is best. Native plants don't like getting wet, ideally.
And it's not just drip, it's drip ideally like into a tube. Mm-hmm. So that you're getting the water down to the roots and not on the surface. Watering the surface like that isn't good for the native plant, and it also encourages weeds to grow. Right.
If you want to minimize the amount of weeding that you have to do, putting in PVC watering tubes, and we can, we can send you an email if you contact us. We can show you what that looks like. But using the watering tubes gets the water, like Donna said, down to the plant roots. You're not watering the surface and having weed seeds germinate. So yes, drip's best, but drip into a watering tube is even better. Can you talk a bit about using heritage gardens in public spaces or around businesses? Are there additional pointers about doing this? Yes. It all comes down to plant selection, because what I've learned is with municipalities and businesses is they really need those native plants that are long-lived and require very little to no maintenance. And plants that are perfect for that are things like buckwheats, because they're mounding, they're long-lived, they don't reseed aggressively or really move around. The exception might be snow buckwheat. It does like to reseed. And the flower stalks typically are such that you could, if you wanted to clean the plant up, break them off with your fingers, or even if you didn't, it would be okay. The plant would not look scraggly. So I think for businesses, it's really about plant selection, plant selection, plant selection. And then really choosing plants and really working with them on watering, because inevitably they're planting in May. So it just happens. I don't know why. It's because things happen that way, and they have to finish the project and they have to close the project out. They can't leave it open till the next fall. And so they have to provide some supplemental water, but then it's going back the next year and like making sure that water gets turned off. Water for establishment is okay, but then we have to make sure that water gets turned off if they do it that way. Is there a Heritage Garden program in the Methil Valley? And if yes, who are the contacts? Okay, the Methil Valley. That isn't that by Derby Canyons, right? I'm going to say.
I don't know.
Okay, I'm trying to remember. The Methil Valley. So you might have to tell me what county that covers. I know, I'm terrible. I'm sorry. So the Heritage Garden, the only Heritage Garden program that we have in Washington State is Heritage Gardens.
Did you see that Okanagan County?
Okanagan, okay. No, we do not have a Heritage Garden program in Okanagan. However, there is a program that conservation districts promote called Firewise. And the Firewise basically is fire prevention. So landscaping around your home in a way to basically slow the spread of wildfire to protect your property. Okay, it's all about zoning. And so the Heritage Garden program actually fits very, very well into Firewise landscaping because many of the native plants can be fire resistant. And so check with your local conservation district about a Firewise plan using native plants. And I think that will be your in there because they can help you with that. Okay, I have a garden adjacent to my home that I water to protect the home from fires. Okay, here we go. What are your thoughts on heritage gardens and fire buffers? So I sort of just covered it a little bit there. But yes, but there are going to be things that you don't plant up close to your house. Some of our native plants like sagebrush have a higher oil content and are very flammable. Very much like arborvitae. You really should not have arborvitae. We all have arborvitae planted close to your house because that is extremely flammable as well. So yes, heritage gardens can be incorporated into a Firewise landscape. It's just all about plant selection. Does your plant list address deer resistance? You know, it doesn't. I don't have that as a modifier. We don't have a terrible problem with deer here, maybe in some of our, in the Tri-Cities specifically, but if I have a client who has a deer problem, I'm happy to do the research. There's a lot of information out there on landscaping and to address the deer, things that the deer don't like, things that rabbits don't like. So it does not directly address it, but if you have specific questions, feel free to contact me offline. And I'm happy to come up with a sub-list for you for that. How long does it take for a garden to mature? This is a great question, Angela. So if you plant in the fall, by the end of the next summer, you're going to be really surprised with some of the plants. But I would say for full maturity, to really get a full look, probably 2 years. By the end of the second summer, after you've planted, if you've planted in the fall, you'll be very happy with that look. And then after that, you know, some things grow slowly, like sagebrush and other things, sagebrush, bitterbrush. So you might have to give those, you know, 3 to 4 years to really be that focal point plant. If you plant in the spring, it's going to take them a little bit longer. But as far as plant size goes, the thing we need to remember about native plants is that they are grown, most of them, especially the ones for the you know, droughty areas here, with very long roots. And so you'll have a little teeny tiny plant at the top, and you'll have this huge long root down below. So first off, be prepared. You have to dig a little deeper hole. Okay, don't skimp on that. It needs to be the length of the root. But what happens is that a massive root system really allows the plant to A, get the moisture it needs to grow, and B, it's already got a head start. So it's going to really be able to take off and grow, and much quicker than I think people are thinking that it will, because there's just a little teeny tiny bit of plant up at the very top. You'll be surprised. Any book recommendations for learning about ecology, natural history, and or indigenous lifestyles of the Columbia Basin? Oh my gosh. So anything Jack Nesbitt has written is phenomenal.
That's what I was going to say.
I work for the government, so technically I probably shouldn't be answering this question. You know, we worked very hard to put information into our plant selection guide on the indigenous significance of plants, but please keep in mind our information came from literature. You know, theirs is not our story to tell, and so we really relied on the resources of others who hopefully have collaborated directly with the indigenous peoples. But in the back of our book is a bibliography. It is, it goes from page 152 to page 158 with very small text. There are a lot of resources there. But Donna, anything in particular other than any of Jack's books? Was there a particular resource that you gravitated towards?
For the ethnobotany, there was that website, which you can look in the book and read about. Mm-hmm. Jack's books are great for the local history, mm-hmm. natural history, and people history. I think if you look at the references we use, I spent a lot of time looking at references until I kind of settled into the ones that had the best information.
Yeah. One of my favorite references, just for plants, if you've never been on the Burke Herbarium's website, it is amazing. And as far as written publications go, Wildflowers of the Pacific Northwest, Mark Turner, and Phyllis Gustafson, that's an amazing book too if you're just looking for you know, pictures of the plants and where you can find them regionally. So 2 great resources there on the plants. I'm more of the plant lady. Donna did a lot of research on all the other stuff. Are heritage garden plants generally full sun choices? This is a great question. The vast majority for our area, are going to be full sun. However, our heritage garden plant list does go outside the confines of right here in the Columbia Basin. We go over to the foothills of the Blues, over up, you know, in higher elevations, and recommend plants that will do well in the Tri-Cities with a little extra water, and some of them are part shade. Okay, so Western Columbine is a really good example. Some of the shrubs like golden currant, wax currant. Oh my goodness, my red flowering currant is blooming now at Hanson Park. Bee Snow My Heart, this is the first year it's bloomed, and I think we did the garden 3 years ago. Absolutely gorgeous. So lots of shrubs, but they do need extra water, and yes, some forbs for sure that you can get. But again, they're higher elevation plants, but if you're planting them, if you have part shade to shade and you have extra water, yeah, there are plants, because it never fails. I show up to do a site visit and it's the north facing, the north side of the house, right up, and I have to start right up against the house and then go out. So I have to have something that we can recommend right up against the house. So we do have those plants. So look at the list. Look for part shade to shade on the PDF or in the book, and yeah, and they'll need more water, but you can definitely use those if you have shade to part shade. I like the native plant emphasis. If you recommend basalt columns or crushed basalt, is it suitable if your materials are not currently available within your property? Yes, it is understandable that if you do a garden, you're probably going to have to, you know, bring in material. Please don't go out and harvest material. There are places where you can, you know, harvest rocks and things that's allowed, typically off of government land, but you have to check, you have to ask, you might need a permit. Please don't go harvesting basalt columns. They're a lot heavier than you think. There's a photo that a geologist showed me once, and somebody had gone out and tried to harvest a basalt column on their own and put it in this back of the pickup truck, and the truck was crushed. by the column. And I haven't been able to find that picture. But yes, but a lot of the landscape companies do have regionally local basalt. Comes in browns and reds and dark, darker colors. So it just depends on your aesthetic and what you like. Right. So did I miss anyone? Any other questions?
I think somebody asked what the herbarium was again. That's Burke. It's associated with the Burke Museum.
Yes.
So I think if you Google Burke Museum herbarium, you should get it. It should come up.
Yes, and Burke is B-U-R-K-E. There's an E on the end. And if you just Google Burke herbarium, that, like Donna said, that should come up as well.
The one thing that's especially nice about that site is they are, best I could tell, they are totally current on as the names have changed on the plants. So if you want to have the right Latin name or know what the right Latin name is, that's the best place to go.
Yeah.
We do have a few extra questions in the chat if you want to address the chat. And I did put the Burke's, the image gallery's website in the chat.
All right. So
one would be, what was the tall red flowering plant that you showed that showed up in several of your photos?
So we don't have very many red flowering natives here. So the ones that you've probably seen in the garden pictures, that's going to be firecracker penstemon. It is native to the desert Southwest. Hummingbirds love this plant. It blooms in the spring. It's not going to continue to bloom through the summer, but it does give you that nice tall pop of red. And I said especially paired with the Oregon sunshine down in front, that yellow with the red is definitely a showstopper. But it does have really nice dark green leaves. So even after it blooms, you can cut the spent flower stalks off and enjoy that nice dark green foliage. Let's see. Oh, all right. I'm in the chat. Sorry, it took me a minute to. Okay. Alice, I'm glad you're here, and I'm glad to hear that you keep adding to your plans. And Heidi, I'm glad you're here. Heidi's another one of my heritage gardeners. She's working on her heritage garden. Have you done work with schools or other public institutions? So the Heritage Garden program, I do not go into schools and do presentations. We have an extremely robust education program through the conservation districts. We have Wheat Week and Drain Rangers and some other programming. And honestly, Heritage Gardens, because I manage 2 conservation districts and also our state nonprofit, the Washington Conservation Society. Heritage Gardens is the fun thing that I get to do with one-on-one with landowners and businesses. I just don't have the resources to go into schools. However, I will help a school design a heritage garden. So if you're a school and you want a heritage garden and you want me to help you develop a planting plan for that, I am more than happy to do that. But I don't go into the schools, but I know that our Columbia Basin chapter will often go into schools and do presentations. So there's that wonderful partnership. I don't have time to, but there are folks at our chapter that I knew have gone into schools and done things with the schools. So, and don't forget our master gardeners. They may not have native plant programs per se, but they do have some wonderful hands-on activities for the kiddos. Will any of the plants you recommend for the Columbia Basin gardens adapt to West Side garden conditions? There are some that may. You know, you would need to look at your water requirement or what your precip zone is, and then look at the heritage garden plant and see what that upper range of water is. So I'm trying to think, Donna, like serviceberry, I'm not sure. Some of the flowering shrubs may be able, mock orange, for example, some of the plants that we would have to supplementally water here to get them to grow may do well on the west side, but I'll have to be honest with you, I'm a desert dweller. So
the program was developed for the desert. So
yes.
Most of the plants in there would not appreciate all that rain.
Right. Yeah.
But there's some that would work. I mean, the main thing is to look at the water requirement and look at the sun requirement. Some of them need full sun, and if you live in a place where it's kind of raining all the time, the lack of sun is going to bother them. So,
right. I think the best thing to do would be to create, you know, find your plant list for your area, and you know, you can check with your local chapter of the Native Plant Society. I'm sure that they have plant lists. There is 12 chapters in the state, so I know that there's quite a bit of activity on the west side. And then check with your local conservation district as well, because they may have plant lists, or even the Audubon Society. They often have recommended plant lists. So lots of organizations to partner with. Can a heritage garden incorporate the food forest concept or edible plants? Yes, I get that a lot, because creating landscapes that will work for you, you know, is important to a lot of people these days. So we have to be a little bit careful. There were a lot of plants used by indigenous peoples for food and medicinal purposes. We only recommend those plants. So we give you that information. You need to do specific research. We're not going to recommend, you know, certain things. But there are some plants that, you know I can recommend to you that are perfectly fine, like golden currant.
So if currant is safe.
Currant's really safe. There's no special preparation for currant. Serviceberry. So there are some flowering shrubs that create berries, that have berries that are very, very safe, easy to harvest, and there's lots of online recipes and suggestions and recommendations. When you start getting into some of the wildflowers, you know, you have to be really careful. So you'd have to do some additional research there. We love what we do, don't we, Donna? We're very, very fortunate. So absolutely. You're welcome. Thank you for allowing us to do this. I'm interested in that as well. Some of the heritage garden plants are marked as food on Native Food Nursery. Yes. So again, you know, so someone's pointing out a website, nativefoodnursery.com. And again, you know, because of liability issues, I would say, you know, do your own research and, you know, harvest things from your garden kind of at your own risk, other than the currants, you know, or serviceberry or something like that. But there are lots of resources out there. Just make sure, common names of plants. People call different plants 100 million different names. If you are planting something for food, make sure that you're working off of a scientific name. Make sure that scientific name hasn't changed, and make sure what you're planting is what people are really talking about before you harvest it and prepare it as a food source. So just a little cautionary note there. Safety first. All right, anything else? My puppy's back from his walk, so you might hear some background noise.
Donna and Heather, I want to thank you so much. This was a beautiful presentation today. And thank you for your amazing work transforming those green grass spaces to amazing native places. Beautiful. Folks, this afternoon we'll have another gardening presentation, gardening with natives in the Pacific Northwest, that will have a stronger West Side focus for those of you that had those West Side questions. That webinar begins at 4 p.m. and you can still register to attend. And I do hope you'll all consider either buying the book directly from the Columbia Basin chapter at a chapter meeting or going online to purchase the book. It is beautiful, so well done. Shout outs to all of the contributors, the Columbia Basin chapter, and to both of you for your work. And thank you so much for your Conservation District partnership. I think it really helps us flourish in the state of Washington.
Thank you.
Yay. Thank you. Thank you all for participating.
All right. Take care, everybody. Have a good weekend.
Thank you.
Bye.